Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, Capital Markets Analyst and host of your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today we've got Katrina Glogowski. She's an angel investor and attorney with us to take a look at the 7 tips to a successful investment deck as we dive into Biomedican, a biosynthetic cannabinoid company. Katrina, thanks for being back with us.
Morning, Josh.
So let's see if Biomedican can identify business plan goals, if they know their audience, whether or not they understand the marketplace, if they can identify needs and roadblocks, know what sets the business apart, introduce the team and products, and then create a summary. Let's jump right into it.
I have high hopes, Josh.
Very interesting, if nothing else. So with 34 pages is quite a bit. We're going to just try and see what we can get through. They were founded in 2017. They had a seed round in February of 2018. They're a California-based company looking at a global team of experts. And so you looking at a unique method of biosynthesis production for cannabinoids from a proprietary yeast. And their goal is fast and low price production of high purity cannabinoids without plants. It's cheaper, faster, and access to more cannabinoids and more environmentally friendly. So they look at the business opportunity. We see a lot of this about what the market's supposed to look like. So trying to give the investors a brief overview. It's not the general map that we see. So they break that down. So that's a difference from typical pitch decks. And looking at future cannabinoids, I like this, how it's very focused. So they're looking at pharmaceuticals, food services, inhalables, edibles, beverages, all the way to pet, wellness. They covered that pretty well. And looking at active pharmaceutical ingredients, so the projected cannabinoid-based pharmaceutical market is increasing exponentially and huge potential to disrupt. So what sets them apart, looking at drug categories, so diabetes is a $51 billion expenditures across the U.S., looking at early studies showing the efficacy of cannabinoids against a large variety of indications, displacing synthetic compounds that can be harmful with fewer side effects, and a power mechanism of action for the endocannabinoid system to permeate the blood-brain barrier.
Yeah, here you have your total addressable market. I don't think CBD or cannabinoids is going to replace insulin, for example, but it's nice to know the various conditions that might be addressed. So TAM, check.
$327 billion total addressable market, according to them. So what are cannabinoids? It's talking about cannabis sativa or pure cannabinoid crystalline, and what the uses can be, for antimicrobial, PTSD, stress, you name it.
I'm missing the little asterisk on this slide that says not FDA approved for any of these conditions, but I'm sure they'll get to it, Josh.
Yeah. Asterisk, my attorney said this is for entertainment purposes only.
Yeah.
So the major cannabinoids, THC, CBD, and then whatever the other 485 known cannabinoids are, looking at billions of dollars in market potential. Some of the more minor cannabinoids, you're looking at CBG, THCA, which is supposed to reduce the munchies. CBL is not on the list, but that's pretty good for medical. Lots of different rare ones. And then we saw some CBDP and THCP. We were up in Lift Expo not too long ago, me and you, when we had heard about that. And that's supposed to be an exponential push. So a huge driver of other cannabinoids if put together. So a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, it seems like they have a new one every week.
Too many. People don't even know what CBD is, and there's close to 485 plus other ones. So lots of opportunities. Flower, crude extracts, diamonds, or solid cannabinoids. And so they talk about the biosynthesis is not new, going back to a while ago.
That's pretty old. Yeah.
So biology, I did not do well in biology, so I'm not even going to cover these slides, but essentially they're talking about cells are factories and they can produce desired compounds. This is a business podcast, not a chemistry or biology podcast. So we'll just kind of highlight some of this stuff and you guys can take your time and look at it all you want.
Honestly, for a potential investor, from a scientific background, this information would be very helpful. I would recommend that they put it in an appendix
Hmm.
as opposed to in their maiden slide deck, but it does demonstrate their knowledge of their process, and that's nice for an investor.
Yeah, I would echo that. I would bury this in the bottom. It's a little bit too much getting into the weeds. I want to see their real business plan before I get into all of this. But it
Agreed.
does help to kind of set it up and what it's supposed to be for, looking at cannabinoids versus cellular agriculture. It's supposed to be more efficient. And so to kind of get into their business plan, I guess they have to touch on that at some point. But it's removing the plant and its constraints from the supply chain. It'd be a lot easier to get cannabinoids without plants synthesizing it. So it's synthetic versus fake cannabinoids. So it's not spice, it's not K2, it's just made differently. So they have their process in here, the sugar, water, yeast, the bioreactor, creating pure CBDA, conversion of sugars to cannabinoids in one step.
Uh, Possible.
I don't know enough to challenge them on that. I assume they know what they're doing. They
I
don't
know
have.
somebody who's doing it with oranges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Something that also might set them apart. It's a pure product, no contamination, is environmentally friendly, less footprint, less water, electricity, less fertilizer. No, actually, no fertilizers. It's a closed system, so no heavy metals, which I really like because they talked about crossing that blood-brain barrier. And so, with nanotech or anything that crosses the blood-brain barrier is going to take heavy metals or anything with it. So, having no heavy metals in here, no bacteria, no fertilizers, no pesticides, that's a huge plus.
This is going to be very important for the future of the industry, and you can call it organic or green or pesticide free, all these words that people are putting out there, when really the synthetic cannabinoids are the easiest way to GRAS certification to get them into the mass market on a FDA approved basis. This is very interesting. I don't know if a consumer is going to really care about a synthetic cannabinoid versus an organic, if you will, not organically grown, but an organic product made from plants. If you're going to put it on your face, maybe. If you're going to take a pill, maybe. But it is nice to know that they are addressing this main concern. Josh, you and we talked about VapeGate quite a bit over this past year, and this is one of the issues that they're trying to address. So good for them.
So for some of the people listening that are either interested or they're going to be creating their own deck looking for investment, you mentioned that that being GRAS certified, which is generally recognized as safe, would help with international appeal and sales. Can you kind of briefly explain why?
To get GRAS certification, you have to have a clean product that you can replicate over and over and over again. And then you go through scientific studies showing that your clean, replicatable product is safe. GRAS certified, as generally regarded as safe, GRAS certification is just basically it's the fallback for the CBD industry, saying we haven't gone through all the testing, but we're using ingredients that are generally regarded as safe, already GRAS certified. And it's one of the struggles that the CBD industry faces, because the FDA is saying, no, you can't put this ingredient in consumables. So the target of GRAS certification for these CBD companies is the holy grail, if you will. Now, when you start talking about overseas or international business opportunities, much more strict than the United States, Canada, Europe. If you are not GMP, and the acronym in Europe is EFSA. I'm going by memory on that, but it's the equivalent of the FDA. And they have also said CBD is not a good thing. So somebody taking the bull by the horns to synthesize a product might be the route to get you in those international markets while you wait in the United States for your GRAS certification.
Mm-hmm. So in other words, you get GRAS certified because that's what everybody else is doing. That's how it's normal.
Yes. For example, if your target market is Coca-Cola or Starbucks or Justin's Nut Butter, you had better be GRAS certified. Corporate America is not going to touch a CBD product that doesn't have some type of certification behind it.
Right. So the other advantage, it enables the pharma and CPG to scale at a consistent low cost. So like you said, the consistency, it has to be there. You have to replicate that every single time, and it has to be normalized. So gaining access to those rare cannabinoids is going to be good. And then IP, of course, if you can patent it, all the more important to investors.
Agreed.
So I like how they touch on some competition. So that's good. It meets one of our criteria. So they've got chemical synthesis, agriculture, partial biosynthesis, and then full biosynthesis.
Can we spend a second on that slide there? This is what I like to see in your competition.
Mm-hmm.
So what are other people doing? What are you doing? And where do you fit in this process? And that's the way to do it for an investor. I do not spend my living hours researching this. Nice little chart addresses it. And there's some names on this chart that we already know. And it just shows that they understand the market and really good on them for this.
So they took it a step farther. If you look at the far right, the placement of each of the competitors on the graph is determined. If it's on the very bottom, they're inefficient. It's at the very top, it's efficient. So you see GW Pharma kind of right there in the middle. I really like the layout of this. This is something I haven't seen before. It's very well done, broken into sectors, agriculture to partial and full biosynthesis, as well as how they rank them on their efficiency. So very, very well done here.
Agreed.
So there's a crucial role of oils and lipids in the cannabinoid synthesis. And so they kind of go into some detail here about the toxicity of cannabinoids for plants, how it produces oily glands and what it is, and essentially trying just to outline why more oil is less toxic for cannabinoids that are made from less toxic, diluting them. Again, just trying to educate before they sell, I guess.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
They have a unique approach for the use of oily yeast. They have a microorganism selection. They have the IP on that. And only 2 competitors are using this type of oily yeast suited for the production of cannabinoids.
This might be their attempt to differentiate themselves from the market, Josh.
Looks like it. So Biomedican, they've created a strain that can produce up to 80% by weight in oils. That's a phenomenal yield. That's a great return.
I think they're talking about their yeast, though.
Good call. That's why I have you here. Hold me accountable. Completely new way to produce this olive tolic deveric acid. Yeah, I didn't say that right, but that's okay.
Again, I think this is a little sciencey for a pitch deck. Maybe this should be in the appendix.
Yeah, if I can't pronounce it, probably should be buried a little bit. Highlight it, talk about it in one bullet point. I think getting its own page is premature. On the 22nd out of 34 pages, I would bury it. They have benefits. So this is perfect. This, tell me, dumb it down. Let me know why there's benefits from a scientific and intellectual property standpoint. The intellectual property of production and their acid, how that overlays with what they're doing between the yeast and the acid, why it makes sense. And they kind of have both of them there.
Nice to acknowledge the elephant in the room, Aurora, as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they are making CBGA, CBGVA, which is interesting. I don't really know what the CBGVA is. Actually, the first time I've even heard of it. So I might have to go back and take a look at this down the road, but it looks like they have a patented portion from Aurora, so they are talking about some other unique aspects with the competition, what they have. But again, it's we're getting into the weeds here.
Again, appendix.
Mm-hmm. So THCA, THCVA, how to optimize that, what it is.
I like that they have applied for patents, but they could have condensed 3 of these slides into one. Again, way too sciencey for an investor, but I like the mention of the IP.
Mm-hmm. And talking about optimizing, they have systems to use different carbon sources and fermentation strategies, as well as intellectual property. So this is really where most Canadians drool over as where do we have exclusivity in the form of intellectual property. This is what individuals like, especially investors. So I would have led with this with a couple of the other bullet points, and just kind of stay in high level overview of how the production in the yeast and the cannabinoids differentiates them and where they stand with IP.
I like the IP.
And finally get to the current timeline. Page 28 here talks about seed investments all the way to key hires and patents filed. They have key DNA samples and clone precursors, down to new strains, additions of new patents, working production and commercialization.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then the next thing, they've got the path to commercialization, how they're going to do it. I'd imagine somewhere.
Josh, I'm going to cut you off here. We're on slide 29.
Yeah.
And we hear for the first time they're not operational yet. They don't even have a license yet, Josh.
No way.
Josh, slide 29. They were doing so good. Honestly, they were doing so good.
They were dazzling us with the science, and they distracted us from the fact that they don't have a license. But at least they're not talking about an LOI. Yeah. So they haven't triggered me quite yet. We do get to the team finally. Here's the team. Oh, Jim Macoso is an advisor. So with Lucid Labs, if Jim's involved with it, then they've automatically got my interest, because anything that guy touches turns to gold.
I like these slides. I like to be able to Google these people, and when I run into somebody that I know, it makes me very happy.
So here's a summary. They're pioneering a novel proprietary cannabinoid production method. The market is growing exponentially. They have an experienced team, and they're seeking funding. So they finally get to some investment terms, and to be honest with you, I don't even know what the money's going to be going towards, because kind of really haven't discussed that too much. They talk about a $10 million investment. They have a determined value. They don't have a pre-money valuation yet.
This is a problem, Josh, here, because they're raising Series B. If they're on Series B, that means they already raised Series A, and those Series A investors came in at a valuation, and now you're raising Series B and you don't have a valuation yet? What about your Series A folks? That's a misstep.
Or it's not accurate. So my guess is that pre-money, if they're still pre-money, they probably got a friends and family loan, and that's why they don't have a valuation, is because it just went to going to get those patents. So they have the patents, now they have the proof of concept, and so they're trying to get licensed. They're trying to get the investment for license to become operational, with a breakdown of funds. But I don't see anything about there's equipment. But what about your property? What about your building? What about licenses? And maybe you don't need a license for synthetic cannabinoids. Maybe it's just a regular license. But if you're going to be in Canada, Health Canada is going to require some specific license for that, and not having that in here for a roadblock is an issue.
I have a few comments here. We know a little bit about this space. A lot of the players are still underground. But there's a phytogenesis. They have already taken their synthetic cannabinoids, including THC and CBD, to the FDA for approval. So they're a little bit behind here. Also, I really don't like that they've addressed some of their competition, but not all of their competition. Specifically, their direct one-on-one competitors, for example, is phytogenesis, which is sort of following the exact same track. I'm a little confused about that. It seems like the people that put this deck together really knew what they were doing. So why exclude a direct competitor? Also, the use of funds. I don't like, I just have even a general administration category to talk about your licensing. And even if you're not going to go after an LP in Canada or a cannabis license in the States, what about the FDA licensing? What about the DEA licensing in order to be able to ship this? Now, if I am totally 100% wrong and this is a licensing play, then why did I have all these pictures of equipment and patents and this type of thing? So they were doing very well. They came out very strong, but they missed a few there at the end in a wrap-up nature.
Yeah, I may have included Next Leaf. Their ticker symbol is oils. They're being getting a lot of patents, U.S. and Canadian patents. CEO Paul Peterson has been very, very busy. So I would include maybe that in there as well. They didn't really create too much of an ask. And so with that, let's kind of break this down and see where Biomedican lies with our 7 tips to a successful investment deck. Did they identify the business plan goals?
Yeah, they need a license.
They want a license and they want to, I think, improve the amount. So they want a license and they also want to get some more patents and probably scale and generate some revenue. I think they know their audience. They know that there's a need for this. Obviously, it's fairly niche. Do you think they met that criteria?
Yes.
And understanding the market, seems like they threw a lot in there. They know the valuation. They don't know the valuation of their own company. I think they do know the market, though.
I think they understand, number one, the investors. They had a lot of things in their deck that the investors like, but they also address the actual cannabinoid market, which is hard to do for non-science people.
Mm-hmm. No, I don't think they had too many roadblocks. They told us kind of what they needed. They missed on the roadblocks. Should we give them half on that? What do you think?
Yes, the roadblocks I think they missed, and burying the fact that you need a license on slide 29 of 34.
Number 5 is knowing what sets the business apart. I think there's a couple aspects in there where they try to differentiate themselves. I think they did a fairly decent job. Are we getting them a full point for that?
Yep.
All right. Introducing the team, yes. Products. I think they listed a fair amount of rare cannabinoids that they want to develop. Was that good enough to get a full point?
Yes.
And then creating a summary.
They did have a summary. It was an unsatisfactory summary, but they did have a summary.
How about half a point for that?
All right.
That makes 6 out of 7 leaves.
Is that our highest?
No, I think we've had a 7, as a matter of fact. But with that, would you invest in this?
I would give it further consideration. I'm not going to write them a check based on a pitch deck alone. I would never advise anyone to do such a thing. But their IP is great. Mm-hmm. Their business plan is interesting. And most importantly, if they are going for some type of FDA certification for this process, that is where the future of the industry is. And I would put that like slide number 1, because that's how you're going to get across the United States and, most importantly, international.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would probably ask a few more questions. I like the synthetic aspect of it. They can get a great loophole around potentially Health Canada and Europe and Asia. I'm completely avoiding hemp and cannabis altogether. Like you said, this is just oranges
Yeah.
or whatever. I do like that aspect. I like the potential exclusivity. So I would definitely be asking some more questions. But
I would recommend that they spend a little bit of time on their actual direct competitors, Pureform, Phytogenesis, to give a little bit more accurate description. They didn't slap this pitch deck together in 5 minutes. They should do a more accurate job, because I'm going to find that out in due diligence anyway.
likewise, I want to know a lot more about the financing. I want to know what the valuation is, where the money is going to be going, what your milestones are, what your exit strategy is, where that seed, and round A went. I want to know what the cap table is, all that good stuff. But, most of the time you don't see that in a deck.
Agreed. But 6 out of 7, good on them.
6 out of 7 for Biomedican, not too bad. So with that, we're going to roll this one up. I want to thank my guest, Katrina Glogowski. She's an angel investor and attorney. Thanks for being back on the podcast.
Thanks, Josh.
I'm Josh Kincaid. This is the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't. And I'm out.